number one, this is a miracle. Number two, I don't trust this miracle. Like every step was scary. Like we were taking very small steps, but every step I was like, I don't know. We can't do this. Like, Percy wants me to quit my job waitressing, and that's crazy. Like, we're never going to make enough money to do this. And she was like, what makes you think that? Like, look at the proof of your life and listen to it. And I was just like, I know, but those are flukes.
Tara Mangini is one half of the well-known home design duo Jersey Ice Cream Co. She and Percy Bright started in a small apartment in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania years ago, and for the better part of a decade have been doing projects all over the US and in other parts of the world, taking ramshackle apartments and houses and even hotels and turning them into beautiful, beautiful living spaces that quite literally are made for magazines, but more importantly, are incredible pieces of design work that people love to live in. I feel fortunate to know Tara for a number of reasons, and our friendship began back in college when we went to the University of Delaware together, and we actually got very close when we were in the Deltones together, that a cappella group that I spoke about in my pilot episode. Tara texted Nate and I after hearing the episode that I did with him a few weeks ago. This is what she said.
I'm only 12 minutes in and I love this and you guys so much. My heart is a swell of relatable feelings. Can't wait to keep listening. It's like the best friends convo you could ask for.
Hey, thanks, Siri. So, my mistake. She texted us while she was listening to the episode, not afterwards. And when she was done, I actually reached out to Tara, and I was curious to hear more from her about what was relatable to her in her career as an artist, because she is someone who I thought is actually pretty accomplished and successful in her own right. And I wanted to hear more about what moved for her, what was up after hearing that conversation between Nate and I. We got to talk about what it was like for her before her design career ever got a foothold anywhere.
And I just had this feeling of like, I need to be so entertaining so that no one notices that I'm a huge failure.
I challenged Tara and pushed back on her own perception as to how her success came about. If you go back and look at your own evolution of the last decade, I think you can uncover a lot of really important qualities that you had to build up to really come to where you are now. And I think it would be a real service to yourself to go back and list those qualities and recognize it. You embody them because you're here right now in this place and you've made it work.
Yeah. This feels like such a therapy session. It's amazing.
And best of all, we simply got to reconnect and just catch up about where we're at and what's true for us in this moment and be a bit of support for each other.
I love this conversation. I love all of this kind of stuff. And I know that you do. And like figuring it out would be a drag. It's like, this is actually all the good parts, you know? And maybe that's the big thing.
My name's Joey, and you're listening to This Naked Voice. I like that we're doing this on a wild hair and just jumping in.
I know.
You listened to the interview with Nate and me.
Yeah.
Is that the only one you listened to?
I listened to you and Nate. I listened to a little bit of the other two, the music person and the puppet
master. Yeah. Yeah, I was really touched to get that note from you about Nate and
I loved it. I really did. I felt just like such an instant. I mean, I know you guys, so obviously that episode for me was a little more hard hitting, but I just was like, I know all these feelings, like so intimately, and it's probably like something everybody feels, which is sort of sad, but I don't know. I just was like, I love these people.
That episode to me was really important, and I didn't know it was going to be until I was editing it, and until actually until it was kind of done and I was listening back to it, it kind of came full circle in the way of even putting this podcast together, putting these episodes together. I didn't realize what a healing process this can be in itself, the creative process of putting this podcast together.
Right.
And it was the fact that I got,
oh, right, I'm making something.
yeah, I am. I'm making something each week or every other week with each episode. And, I don't like the idea of just recording a conversation and then throwing a quick little intro and tag on it and calling it a podcast. Like, I like sitting with it and editing it down and seeing what's important and what's the story in each of these episodes.
Yeah.
What will enhance it and what will take away, where might people lose interest? Because, not all conversations are worth listening to start to finish.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And, that, I think that's the bit about artistry, is recognizing what's important and what's not, or what do I think is relevant and what's not.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise we're just throwing everything at the audience, and that's not what artists do, I think, in a good way.
Yeah.
But this episode with Nate was super healing, because I got to listen back to that conversation over and over again and hear the message again and again. I got to hear myself again and again.
Yeah.
And hear the conversation unfold. And I got to understand more fully what am I taking away from this? What am I really taking away? And how do I wrap this up in a way that really means something? How do I explain what this means to somebody else? How do I explain what this means to me to somebody else?
Yeah. I mean, it was such like I know you guys, but it still felt like such a glimpse into like your specific friendship, which felt so like enviable and special. And yeah, I guess like I said, it was like, man, everybody knows this feeling. And I don't know, something about the way you guys talking about that whole, like, I didn't hit some expectation I had for myself, and like you guys kept saying like how like ashamed you felt, and like I was like, that is exactly the feeling, which is terrible. But it's like you feel this dumb shame about like not hitting something that you set for yourself, or that you think that somebody expected of you. And like something about just hearing that word associated with it, like it's not, I don't feel like that's the word that people usually say. It's like, I'm frustrated, or like I'm disappointed, or I don't know. I just don't feel like people are like, I feel ashamed that I haven't reached this height or something. And I just felt so like that is exactly it.
It is shame in a way, because, as I understand shame is really about who I am, right? Guilt is about something I've done. I feel bad about what I've done, and shame is about feeling bad about who I am. And not having reached a certain place in life at this point, to me, like the shame is about like, what does that say about me?
Right.
And like, I haven't been able to do these things. So what does that say about who I am as a human, as a man, as a person, as an individual, as, and so shame really, really felt fitting. And
yeah. And it's like this exponential. It's like, I feel ashamed that I haven't hit this height. And then I feel shame that like I want to hit that height, and I feel shame that I feel bad that I haven't. It's like it's just this fucking cyclone of like shame spiral.
Yeah, and and we go through it as humans, and I think artists know it really well. Whether they identify it as such is different, and that's part of what I'm trying to address as a coach is recognizing it. Right? Because shame and vulnerability go really well together in terms of vulnerability helps counter shame. Like shame grows in isolation. Shame grows in silence. Vulnerability is this opportunity for me to speak to what I'm feeling. Like when shame comes up, I get to speak to my shame. And I get to share in feeling this shame, and share that I am feeling this shame. And it allows us to connect and like, oh, me too.
Yeah.
And when shame is shared, it starts to go away. It starts to die out.
So accurate.
right?
Yes. Which is so amazing. It's like, oh, this thing that feels like the hardest thing in my life, the cure for it isn't what I think the cure is, which is to succeed in this wild way. The cure is to just admit it.
Talk about it.
It's so crazy.
Talk about it, right? And that's a big part of why I want this podcast to grow, right? It's sometimes there are no answers. Sometimes it's about just having the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But in having the conversation, answers can be revealed. And sometimes the answers are revealed in just asking the questions.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. But I think that there's something really telling about just having the conversation. I know when I listen into some deep conversations, there are no answers that are specifically spoken by the people who are talking. But in hearing the questions that are being posed, I can come to my own answers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why having the conversation and being witnessed in the conversation, I think, is important.
Yeah.
You and I have, over the years, had a number of conversations where we actually are able to drop into a really good heart space about these very things.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's funny, I hadn't even thought about contacting you initially about being on the podcast because we don't talk that often. But, arguably, you and Percy with Jersey Ice Cream Co. have been pretty successful by any standard definition of success right now. I mean, you guys have been supporting yourselves as, what's the title of what do you guys title yourselves as? Interior designers, like home decor, like what do you guys call yourselves?
I guess home designers.
Home designers?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have had a fair number of clients. You guys have been featured in the New York Times, a bunch of different magazines and blogs. You have almost 100,000 Instagram followers. I mean, by the current standards of success in 2020, you've been pretty successful.
A lot more successful than I expected.
Yeah. And still, like, what I'm hearing from you is you still feel all those feelings that Nate and I were talking about.
Totally. Yeah.
And tell me, I just want to hear you expand upon that some more. Like, what comes up for you?
I mean, I think there's there's like the struggle that I used to have and recognizing that. And I definitely see a change from that. And then there's like the struggle that continues. When we graduated college, whatever, I had a job for a little bit, but I was like, I had no idea what was going on. I was floundering and I ended up like back in Philly. I mean, it was probably like, I don't even know, 4 years after college, but it just was that feeling of, it feels like everyone else is succeeding and I'm not. I'm waiting tables. Nobody thinks I'm going to do anything. And like, I just was so ashamed. And I remember like going to lunch with a bunch of my girlfriends and like an old professor from school. And I just had this feeling of like, I need to be so entertaining so that no one notices that I'm a huge failure because like they all have real jobs and they're making money and I'm a waitress and like nobody needs to be thinking about that. So it's just like, it was such an effort just to like put on some show to like distract from my reality of like how I was so sure everyone was measuring my success and worth and all that stuff. And at the time it was just, I had no vision of what was going to happen. I was like, I tried this one thing that I thought I was going to do and I don't like it. I've kind of tried a couple other things like writing and writing for advertising, but like everything I want to do is hard. None of these things are like get a job and just get paid and that's going to be a great life. It was like, well, I either want to be a writer, a singer, an actress. It was like my 6-year-old career list was like exactly the same, but I was 26 and I was like, I'm going to be a waitress forever. Which isn't the worst thing in the world, but like, I just felt like such a failure. And I, miraculously ended up falling into this like new career with Percy and Jersey Ice Cream Co. But because I was so familiar with that feeling and that was just so what I expected for myself, like, I definitely recognize the difference, but, like, I'm so in tune to that feeling because I just know it so, so deeply or something.
You say you miraculously fell into this career.
It felt like that.
It felt like that, but it wasn't miraculous.
It felt miraculous. It felt like we kept, like, casting a fishing line, and it was like, "Oh my god, like, we caught something. I
But
can't believe it."
yeah, so but that's what I'm really interested in. It felt miraculous, but it wasn't a miraculous thing. There was so much involved in the process of you guys, first of all, pairing up, right? You guys were a couple. You guys had similar interests. And this is all me making this up and from my like friend observation, right?
Sure, sure.
Um, and he had this interest, and you had these talents and skills, and you started this business together. But
Mhm.
you guys worked your asses off, and you cast line out after line out after line out. You cast all these lines out trying to bring stuff in, and you kept catching whatever you were casting out for.
Yeah. I guess that was the miracle.
That's not how fishing works, Tara. it's,
Oh,
it's not.
okay.
It's not how
Well,
fishing works. It's not a miracle every time I catch a fish.
I got one. Oh, Frizzy. He's a nice Frizzy. He's beautiful. Can you touch him?
Right?
yeah.
There's something to the process. You guys are talented. You guys have something within you that speaks to people,
Yeah.
right?
I guess it's one of those things I remember talking to my therapist about at the time, feeling very similar, like, number 1, this is a miracle. Number 2, I don't trust this miracle. Like, every step was scary. Like, we were taking very small steps, but every step I was like, I don't know. We can't do this. Like, Percy wants me to quit my job waitressing, and that's crazy. Like, we're never going to make enough money to do this. And she was like, what makes you think that? Like, look at the proof of your life and listen to it. And I was just like, I know, but those are flukes.
Yeah.
This is the real life. And it takes so long to feel that way, and it still feels that way. Like, we just launched a bunch of new stuff weeks ago, and even though, like, in my deepest heart I was like, I think this will be a success, people will sign up, this will work, we were both still like, what if we launch and it's just crickets? And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everyone, I'm sure, has that fear. Like, every actress is like, what if this is the movie
Mm-hmm.
that's the worst movie of all time or whatever? um but I mean, I have gotten better. I have gotten better at being, like, able to reason myself into believing in myself, essentially.
Yeah, right. Because I hope so. Because at some point I have to start believing the evidence of my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. There's this whole idea of I and I think it's an Einstein quote of it is the universe a friendly universe or an unfriendly universe or indifferent,
Mm.
right? And the way I need to determine that for myself is by looking at the evidence of my life.
Yeah.
And if I believe it's an unfriendly universe, but the evidence of my life has said that it's actually pretty friendly, like, then that's a problem with me. I need to
Mhm.
look at why that contradiction is there. And so far, the evidence of your life has said there's something to what you're doing. There's something to what you and Percy have created, right? And I'm wondering, do you know at what point will you be able to trust in yourself, in the process, that this is not just a fluke?
Yeah.
There's something significant and important and beautiful that I can really lean into and trust about what I've created moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, I do think, and this is not the story of the uncertainty problem. Um, in talking with, like, friends about careers and stuff like that, and when I, like, sense their kind of, like, urgency to be like, I haven't done it and I have to get there and I'm trying, but I haven't. I do not have that. Like I do feel like because we've had this like much success or whatever, that it actually does feel like a relief to me that I'm sort of like, if nothing else, we've done this. And it's like, I'm so proud of what we've done that I am able to like relax a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like if I had waited tables my whole life, I would be feeling pent up and like very frustrated. But because we've done this and I feel like this was really a success, this was such a creative outlet. It was like something I'm really proud of. Like we are constantly like figuring it out and like year to year it's like, will we fail this year, we're not making any money, or like, oh, we have a big client but it's not going well, or it's going great, what a miracle. That the ups and downs are still constantly happening, but I feel like I have like an inner peace because I did this thing that I'm proud of, that like if I had to wait tables for the rest of my life I'd be disappointed, but I would sort of be like, I think I could handle it a lot better than I could have if I didn't have like the peak of
Mm.
the outpouring of like the thing I want to do and I'm creating and it's going well. Which I am like so grateful for because it makes me able to kind of like ride the wave a lot easier, I think.
I mean, what I'm hearing is, to a degree, you've stepped into your gifts and your talents, and you've lived your life on a path where you've been able to utilize them. And
Mm-hmm.
with success or not, you took that risk, and it's actually paid off.
Yeah.
Like that. So I mean, I'm hearing that whether or not it's had success, you took that risk, and that's given you some breathing room of like,
Yeah.
at the end of life, I tried,
Yeah.
right? I did it.
Same with all the like ups and downs and the trusting yourself, and there is kind of this feeling of like knowing what's important. Like we're never going to make like the most money. Like a lot of people are on like a money trajectory like this, like they're going up, our friends are getting better jobs. Like 5 years ago, like it seemed like it was pretty cool, we were making a lot of money. Like now we're making okay money, like it's fine, but we're not going to get rich off of this like and be making $1 million a year. But I'm like, that's not what's important to me. And that's like, through the years it's been like, what's important, what's not important. And I feel like at this point I'm like, what's important is, enough money to get by, sure, but like freedom of your schedule, creative freedom, just like the feeling that I'm doing something I believe in for myself, and that like we are agile enough to keep navigating the waters so that like we're able to get by sort of like living with those core values and not having to be like, I had to get this job and I hate it and I hate my boss and I go into the office and I don't know get why they do this thing that way. Like all those like frustration feelings that can be associated with a job. I feel like we're constantly like, get those out of here. I don't want those. I want less of those. I want more of the life I want, and that's my goal, not like money, status, whatever. If that stuff comes, that's cool, but like that's not the thing.
Mm.
And it's like, as a creative person, the exhausting thing is like, you signed up for the difficult life where this is a constant thing you have to figure out and navigate and work at, and like you don't get to kind of mentally check out and like go into the office and get a paycheck. But the more you live that creative life, I think the more you're like, I would rather die than do that. Like that to me is easy but a nightmare.
Was that part of the overwhelm of being a waitress for you?
What part?
The idea of not being free?
Oh no, I loved that part about it. I loved being a waitress for the freedom and like the money at the end of the day. I was like, this I'm into. I go to work, I'm fine with that. I get money, like I have freedom. I just wasn't into like what it said about me as a person.
I guess I'm trying to parse out what shifted. So, at that point, was it because, when you were trying to be, when you were a waitress in your 20s, there
Hmm.
was this angst going on inside of you. There was this shame that you were feeling, like, just don't talk about me and what's going on in my life. But you
Yeah.
had freedom, which is something that yet you crave in your life.
Well, I guess it's we need to take one step back, which is before I had that job, I had a regular job. I worked in an office. I had a paycheck. I had health insurance. I had like a job title I could say like I'm this and people were like good job, you did the thing. And I hated that. Like I knew I hated that. I could not like the confines of it, the political aspect of an office. Like, I'm not good at all that stuff. And so I was sort of like, well, I can't do that. So when I was a waitress, I was in that feeling of like, I can't go back to that, which is like the easy road, but the road ahead is really hard. And I can't think of anything else but this that is like in the middle of like easy and difficult, manageable. I'm already doing it. It's like I can't go back to the sad, boring road, but like what? I'm gonna be an actress? Like it's just like you're doomed, dude. Like
If you had stayed in the office job, but people were paying you a lot of money and people
no.
were liking your work, well, I mean, that would have said something different about you, right?
Maybe if I'd had a different job and I was like, it's really fun and I'm being super creative and we're all in the same mindset, like maybe it would have gone differently.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I'm so far away from it. It's unfathomable. Like to imagine going to a job and they say like here's your new email address or something, I'm just like no. It's just like it's like my heart is in a prison. I'm just like not for me.
So, I mean, we're in our 30s now, mid 30s, right? And
Late.
yeah, you're older than
Late.
me.
Late.
What's your measure of fulfillment moving forward in your life? To keep that sense of shame in perspective and hopefully absent, right? Like what might bring that sense of shame on to terms of not measuring up anymore? What's your measure of fulfillment for yourself?
I don't think that my measure of fulfillment is necessarily like the success of the business anymore. As far as like what could bring shame, my first thought is like something that's more about like me as a person, actually as a person, like running the business in a way that's greedy or
Hmm.
immoral or something, or, treating people terribly, that kind of stuff that's like points to like a deeper like flaw in myself, I guess. I would feel such shame. Like if something I can't like think of how it happened because I'd have to be doing it obviously, but say something happened with I mean stuff happens with work that's complicated with clients and money and all that shit. And like we try to handle it the best we can, but obviously there's two sides to every story and sometimes the client thinks we're being one way and whatever. And when we have those moments where like the client I think thinks like we're in the wrong and I think that someone thinks like badly about me, it's very hard for me.
Hmm.
So I guess it's like, yeah, sort of living in a way that you can be proud of. That's like my biggest thing that could cause that feeling again, I think.
And in those situations, it doesn't sound like you're actually having any big moral quandary. It's actually just there's a disagreement and someone might view you in a
Yeah,
way that's not true.
right. It's funny because it's still like it does still relate to like that what someone thinks of you thing,
Mm-hmm.
which is the whole deal. Um, and now I guess it's this weird thing where instead of like, it's like a innocent until proven guilty, blah 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 thing, like where it's like before I used to think people assumed nothing of me and I wanted that to be different. Now I think people assume something about me. And if they find out or they think that's wrong, it's like the same problem. And like the other thing that's still true is that like nobody else gives a shit. Like Nobody gave a shit when I was a waitress. Nobody gives a shit now. It's like, nobody cares. They're like, oh, I never thought about it. Never crossed my mind. It's cool you're doing this. I forget. What are you doing again? I'm not on Instagram, so I don't really know. It's like, no one knows.
Yeah, there's that big slap to the ego too. Like, you don't know what I'm
I know.
doing? Oh,
I know.
okay.
It's like,
Huh.
oh, I could just lie. I could do anything. Like, who would know?
You guys are doing something that's very appealing to a lot of people. Right? Your
Hmm.
style is spot on for so many people's tastes. I'm wondering where ideas come from for you. Where does your aesthetic stem from? What do you do when you're stuck? How do you keep moving forward in the creative process when you don't think you can go forward? How do you approach a project? All that. So tell me about your approach to the creative process and creativity in general.
I mean, when we started, we had the uh, benefit of being completely naive to everything that was happening in the interior design world, like how interior designers worked. Instagram was like not a thing. We were not on it. I wasn't looking at anything. Like I didn't know shit. So the beginning was so sincerely organic because it was only coming from us and what we liked. Uh, which was really great. It was just, we were just going completely on a feeling, nothing about designer names or, I mean, anything. It was just like, what do we like? What can we afford? This is cool. I like this. Cool. What if we try this? Just what feels right for the house? What do we get in a vibe about? Like, just, I don't know what. Completely from within, completely just like a self trust process. Um, and that's still definitely the main part of it. Like, I think 80% is just me being like, I don't know why, I just feel like this. But I know that also at the same time, I'm looking at Instagram a lot more. I've just been around things more. I know how designers work. I've seen more things. I spent more time like looking at First Dibs and Etsy and a million things, going to flea markets. So I have more knowledge to pull from, which can be good and can be a burden. I know more what's happening in the design world, which again is good and bad. So I don't know. As it goes on, there are definitely moments where we're like, oh my God, we're just doing the classic, like Jersey ice cream cup, put some plaster in there, put a chair in the corner, like put a plant. Like it's just so stupid. This is the dumbest thing ever. Like, can't keep this up for much longer. Uh, but then, you know,
Uh,
there's, we went to Gotland, I guess like almost 2 years ago now. And it's this little island off the coast of Sweden, and it's just so beautiful. And like the houses are all just really weird, and the design is beautiful and cool. And like they care about their houses and their properties, and just I don't know. We were so inspired. So things like that happen that kind of like push your design, and because you are keeping an eye on things that are happening, and we see our work being not copied, but like we saw our work inspiring a lot of other work. And it's like, oh wow, that kitchen looks really similar to this kitchen we did, or like that's a total Jersey ice cream co room. And I talk to people, I've been doing these house calls, and people will literally be like, yeah, we just tried to copy this room that we liked of yours or whatever. So the goal is like, how do we stay ahead of those people? And figuring out how to do that just like, I hope we get inspired, and then somehow miraculously like you do, and your likes change, or you get into something new, and you just like keep kind of like following this like muddy path, and then I don't know, somehow we managed to like move forward slowly, but it's definitely not a straight line, and a lot of the stuff stays the same, but I think like enough changes where in our heads at least we like see a progression. We're like, oh yeah, this is like that, but plus this. And
you keep using that term miraculously.
She's a believer.
Yeah, I guess she is. But I don't think it's a miracle. I
Yeah,
don't. Like there, and that's what I'm trying to peel back the curtain on.
right. I guess it just, I mean, I keep saying this, it feels miraculous because I think because it's coming from this place that is like not, but it's just, it's from within, but from around you and whatever, that like the discovery feels, I don't know, it doesn't feel, it feels very creative in that sense of like I just showed up and we just kept doing it and it came to be. And so like that kind of feels
Yeah,
miraculous.
but even there's something too about just showing up,
Yeah.
right? That's step one, I think. I
Well,
have to
maybe
show
it's
up.
like I showed up and a miracle came. It's not a miracle, but it's, I don't know, it's, there's some magic there.
Undoubtedly there's magic in the creative process. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't, and that's part of me wanting to understand more is there's something magical about it, and wanting to understand more is understanding the magic. And I don't want to dissect it and make it scientific. That's not my goal.
Sure.
It's just this curiosity of understanding how it works for different artists, how it works for different creatives, and
Yeah.
you know, and how deeply do people really go into how it works for them and how they access it. And for you, it sounds like there is just this deep trust, and maybe you don't see it this way, but the idea that you see it as a miracle in some way says something beautiful about you stepping into each new year of your life, each new month and week of your life in this career, saying, I'm just going to show up and we'll see what happens, because so far things have worked out pretty well, right? There is almost a trust in this process unfolding miraculously. And my challenge to you in some way is, what if you really started to look underneath the miracle aspect in a way and said, like, what if I tried to call it in a little more consciously? You know,
Hmm.
what might I do? How am I showing up to call in this miracle? What is it about me and how I show up that makes these things so accessible, that brings these ideas in, that calls these people into my life? How am I showing up in the world to even be aware that these things are present?
I guess it still feels on one hand like I do feel like when I'm stepping into the world with like a better, like when we're not on the right path, kind of, I can look back and be like, I know why we're not on the right path. And like, we need to fix our karma and our energy to like get where we want to go. Like, I've definitely had that feeling. And then it's like, okay, well, now we have to do some work to get our energy fixed. I'm not thinking about it like, I'm not, when we're talking about it, I'm not saying we need to fix our energy, but there's this feeling of like the energy's not right. And so we're not like getting where we need to get. So it's like, you got to get the energy right. You need to show up. You need to be open to it. You need to trust yourself. You need to like put yourself in a situation where you're needed, kind of. And I'm kind of okay with being like, and when you do those things and you show up and like you let this magical thing happen, that like there's something about it that's kind of a miracle. Like, I'm kind of okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see why that is a comforting thing to a degree.
I mean, I remember I had this conversation with a guy when I first graduated college, trying to get a job. And I called him up because someone told me I should call him. I don't know. He worked in advertising. And he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I really don't know. Like, I have no idea. Like, I could do art direction. I could write. Like, I'll do anything really. And he was like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, yeah, I don't know. I just kind of want to see what happens. And he was like, don't you want to like steer your own ship? And I was like, not really. Like, I kind of want the ship to like just take me wherever. And I don't feel like that anymore because I do care where the ship goes. But it's like when it's going in the right direction, there is something nice about like letting go of the wheel and being like, let's kind of see where it goes a little bit.
Well, that's a big piece about control. right? There's this idea about I'm always learning when I need to direct or guide my life and when I need to surrender.
Yeah.
Right. And there's something deeply, I think, unhelpful to myself about totally surrendering and not guiding my life in any capacity. That's not healthy, I don't think.
Yeah.
And there's something unhealthy about always trying to steer and guide and direct the other way, right? And so maybe at that point in your life, it sounds like you're like, I don't know, like, yeah, I'm just kind of seeing where things go. But at some point when you're like, oh, I like the way the ship's going. All right, let me take over. Let me grab the steering wheel here and
Yeah.
or whatever the big
Definitely,
wooden thing's
I'm
called.
more of like motivated by negativity. So I feel it when we've gone the wrong way. I'm like, nope, that's no good. Like, when things are going okay, you kind of, you let the wheel do whatever.
A lot of people are more motivated by the fear of pain than the attraction of pleasure. You're not alone in that. And it does sound like now you do have some sense of how you're guiding your life a lot more than when you were in your 20s, early 20s.
Definitely. And right now, it's like we're in some nice waters, and that's helpful. And so when you're in the nice waters, it's easy to be like, I really think I've got it this time, and I figured it out, and everything's gonna just I'm cool. I'm just so chill, and I ride the waves and blah blah blah. But I mean, like 6 months ago or something, I was like, we've royally fucked up. And that's okay, it's ups and downs. But even with the royally fucked up situation, I was like, okay, still didn't feel like the end of the world.
What would you want to say to artists who are either starting out or who are in the middle of their careers, just from your own personal experience? And what might they need to go down that path and struggle, if it's a struggle? What qualities might they need to take on? What support might they need to call in?
I mean, I think you really need to like embrace just the uncertainty of it, which can be really, really hard. And I know it's also sometimes like tied to finances, which makes it really, really difficult. And I get that sometimes like one outweighs the other, and you just get to this point where you're like, I hear you. I am an artist. I want this, but like I just can't do this anymore. I'm tired. And that's okay too, That's fine. But I don't know. I guess it's just like you have this life. And so even say you have that moment of giving up and being like, I'm just going to do this other thing or whatever it is. If you just still keep having that nagging feeling, it's like, this is your life. This part counts. It all counts. It doesn't only count in 20 years when you get to the end and you've reached the thing. And try to enjoy the journey, even though it's obviously difficult, but I don't know. I definitely wouldn't trade it for just having had a steady paycheck and know exactly what my next year is going to look like. It's hard. I mean, it's essentially believe in yourself and keep going. But it's just, there's real life, and so it's complicated.
I don't know that you really answered my question earlier about what qualities people might need to embody to embrace that uncertainty and what support they might need to call in.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, what qualities do you embody? And what support have you called in that have helped you?
I mean, I don't think that it's some like bravery or something like that. I think it is like an aversion to what I don't want is so strong. Like I'm so stubborn and I'm so like I don't like to do things I don't want to do, and that just was like kept me from doing that because I just like I couldn't even bring myself to do it. So I like had no other choice really. It's just like I can't do that. Like cannot do that. And so it was like, what else are you going to
And
do?
right. And so what qualities did that bring up in you when you had no other choice than to do this? What qualities did that bring up in you then?
I don't know. It was like, it could be worse. I mean, that's how it felt. I was like, let's just try. We're already doing nothing. Like, there's nothing to lose here. You know, at the beginning, it's like, there's nothing to lose. Like, let's just try this thing. At least we'll have tried it. I don't know. It doesn't feel like, I don't know.
Yeah, you may not see it in a certain way, right? But you essentially closed yourself off from an option. You said, this one way, corporate way, it's not mine. Can't do it. So I only have one option. And if I'm going to survive and thrive in any way, shape, or form, then this is my only path. Right?
Yeah.
And to go down that path, Tara, you had to be courageous because you had to make it work. Right? You had to be curious. You had to be intelligent, and you had to be agile. You had to learn quickly. You had to be flexible, right? If you go back and look at your own evolution of the last decade, I think you can uncover a lot of really important qualities that you had to build up to really come to where you are now. And I think it would be a real service to yourself. This is me totally making this up, but I think it'd be a real service to yourself to go back and list those qualities and recognize that you embody them because you're here right now in this place and you've made it work this long. You only gave yourself one option and you're making it work, and you've had support.
Yeah. This feels like such a therapy session. It's amazing. This is exactly how I get with my therapist when she's like really hitting on a point. I'm like, yep, I know this exact feeling where I'm like, she really nailed it. She really knows what she's talking about.
I'm not trying to be your therapist. I
know, but it's great. You're so right. I can't even, I mean, you heard me. I couldn't even bring myself to use a single word like that. I don't want to use any words. I want to say it's not me. It's just an accidental miracle, and I don't know what happened. I just whatever.
And it's not.
I don't know why.
And it's not. And I want you to own your brilliance and your greatness and your courage, because when you own it as an artist, as a human, it gives other people the courage to do the same. You get me?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I need courage to claim that about myself. And I need to know it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
The more people deflect, the more it makes me think I might have to deflect. So please start claiming it for yourself, because it gives me and everyone else permission to do the same. Own your brilliance. Own your courage. Own everything that's true about you.
I hear you.
I love you to bits.
I love you too. I don't want you to feel any of those things that you were talking to Nate about feeling.
You know, I don't love feeling them. But they exist. It's part of the human experience is self-doubt and uncertainty.
Yeah.
But the point is, I can talk about it. I have support.
Yeah.
What do I do with it is the question.
I mean, in a way, half the victory is you're 30, whatever you are, and you are still searching. You know, like you haven't given up to just say like, forget it. I'm exhausted and I don't care anymore. Like you're still looking for it. And I think that's really what it is to be an artist. Like I have, people in my life who I don't feel that within them. Like they sort of are like, yeah, we did it. We're settled. we're here and now we keep on this path and like, man, we nailed it. And that's great if that makes you happy, but that's probably not in the cards for us. And I think a big thing is accepting that and really being so thankful for that. Because similarly to the corporate path, that sounds so boring to me. I'm like, oh, I want this conversation happening for the rest of my life. I love this conversation. I love all of this kind of stuff. And I know that you do. And like figuring it out would be a drag. Then what would we talk about? It's like, this is actually all the good parts, And maybe that's the big thing. But it's never fun when you get to the end. Like when we finish a project, that's not the fun part. We finish a project, we're like, peace, we're done. Let's go do it again. Like, so you're good.
Yeah.
You're doing it.
While we're recording, why don't we get your voice just telling people where to find more of you and what you do and everything?
Well, the best place is just to follow us on Instagram because that's really the only thing that we give much attention to in the internet planet. Jersey Ice Cream Co. on Instagram. You can also check out our website to see other work we've done. And we started in this new virtual world offering some virtual help with people in their houses since everyone's stuck in their house. And we're also doing some plaster workshops for the first time. It's exciting. It's going pretty well, even though thought it was going to be very, very weird. So give it a whirl.
That's great. And that's all, they can find all that through Instagram and your website, all that information.
Yeah.
JerseyIceCreamCo.com, is that right?
That sounds right.
Go to the Instagram. Start there.
Start at Instagram, yeah.
Great. I'm so glad we did this.
Me too.
On a wild hair. The next morning after that conversation, I woke up to a text message from Tara. This is what it said.
My mind is reeling right now in a wonderful way. Even if no one else gets something out of that conversation, I did. Capital X.
Seer doesn't translate text to implied emotion very well, but you get the point. Then, a follow-up text.
I truly feel like I felt the things you said yesterday. When I think of it now, I think we had no other choice. We had to make it work, and we keep making the choice to make it work. I'm convinced we need to re-record, or at least follow up.
Never one to miss an opportunity to hear about positive growth in one of my close friends' lives. I suggested we get back on Zoom and record the conversation to hear about what had shifted with Tara from one day to the next. And then I got one more text from her.
I might be overselling my brain, but we'll see what happens. I tried to talk my thoughts out with Percy tonight and maybe actually have nothing new to say. It's the same confused jumble. My inspiration appears to have hit and ran.
She was trying to back out on me already, all in the span of just a few hours. But I wasn't willing to let it go. I said, let's jump on and just talk and see what happens. So this second part of the conversation is hearing about what shifted for Tara, how it shifted, and what she's doing with it now. The conversation evolves from there and we get into other topics, such as individual freedom and what the use of that is in the larger context of our society. You may be thinking, Jesus Christ, Joey, how did you end up there? To which I might respond, that seems like an overreaction to ending up at that topic from what we were talking about. It really came about quite naturally. And if you're curious, stick around. You'll find out. All right, here's part 2. I'm curious. I was super stoked to wake up yesterday to your text.
I know. I'm such a letdown now.
No, you're.
Well, I have one of
come
those
on.
moments where, okay, so I have one of those moments where it's like, I know I keep saying this and you're saying like it's not a therapy session, But you know, when you have a therapy session and like afterwards, you're just kind of like, you're feeling like that high and you're feeling like things are unfolding and you're like, yes, like I am making progress. Like I just like had that feeling. I was like, we hung up the phone or whatever. And I felt very like jazzed up and like my brain was working. I was like, yeah, cool, stuff's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know why, like I woke up in the morning and I was like, wow, my whole internal monologue about this has completely shifted to
Mm-hmm.
yours, which I was like, yeah, we did make this choice. We did like decide this was the only option and we made it work and we're flexible and we're creative. And like, man, that is really what happened. And it's not even like it's not how I feel right now, but I just don't feel as jazzed up about it. I'm like, I remember I felt excited, but I can't summon the energy again,
Mm-hmm.
which happens. But
Yeah. But what I'm hearing is you recognized the truth in it.
yeah, I guess so.
But there's something to that, right? Like, I mean, uncovering um, something new in my life will get me excited.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't stay excited forever about that new thing.
I know it's so quick. Everything's like that. It's so quick.
Right? But that's okay. Right?
Oh,
That's why, you know, part of the beauty of life is that it is a never ending quest to uncover more and grow more, to discover new things about the world and myself.
yeah.
Right? We do seek that excitement in a way. And it's in uncovering these new things about ourselves or just things that already exist that I didn't know yet. I didn't understand in this way. And it sounds like
Mm-hmm.
that was like that, because everything that we talked about, that was all true about you already. And it was just a new way of looking at it that excited you for a moment, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That was exciting.
Yeah. I guess it was like for some reason, I felt some like ownership over that feeling and that like not, as opposed to it being like, it was a miracle. I was like, man, we really, like, it's so hard to like really think back and remember and all that stuff. But it's not like we started doing this and it was like, what a success day one. It was like, it started as a totally different business. And like, we literally had nowhere to live for years. We just lived at the job site. Like, things that somebody, if they were reading it, would be like, I don't know. If you were reading a job description, they were like, live on the job site, make no money, you'd be like, I don't know about this. Like, but living it, it wasn't, it was like, it's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Your text said, I truly feel like I felt the things you said yesterday. When I think of it now, I think we had no other choice. We had to make it work. And we keep making the choice to make it work. And what's that?
That sounds true. That sounds
Yeah.
real.
And that last sentence, and we keep making the choice to make it work, it is really important too, because you're like, yeah, every day you guys wake up and you say, we're choosing to live this life, to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the path that we chose. And to do that, you guys have to do certain things. You have to embody certain qualities. You have to take certain risks. You have to be willing to face certain defeats and to persevere.
Yeah.
Right. And I think knowing that, when I recognize those qualities in myself, that actually allows me to continue on the path, because I'm like, yeah, look at what I'm doing. Look at who I am and what I've learned to do.
Right.
It actually fortifies me on that path instead of saying it's a miracle.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought so much about us talking about what advice you give to a young artist or whatever that conversation was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like the whole idea of like the continued discovery and the fact that like, I think I can't tell if it's like the artist is like this or everyone is like this. But like, obviously everybody wants to be happy and feel fulfilled. And I think some people I think some people have like an easier recipe for that, and they're kind of like it's easier for them. But I
Mm.
think for people like us, like we have a more complicated recipe, and like we have a lower threshold for boredom or something, you know? And so I think it really is like a continued search for us. And I think maybe that's the whole thing. Like maybe that's all it means to like live your life as a creative person, is that like you just keep investigating, and whatever you figure out, like if at some point you figure out like, wow, this really brings me a lot of joy and I wasn't expecting it and this is great, I'm going to do this. Or if at some point you realize, you know, I actually just want to be waiting tables so I have more energy for my garden. That's actually what brings me joy. Just like the discovery of it and kind of letting it happen. I think like maybe is just the whole thing. And maybe you have a different, like, varied degree of success or whatever, success in quotes, meaning money making. But it's harder for us because we don't have like a specific goal we're trying to hit necessarily. But say you're like a movie star, you're like, okay, when I get that top grossing movie, like that's going to be the moment. And you hear so many actors say like, and that moment came and I was like, shit, this is not the feeling I was looking for.
Mm.
Like I thought that I was going to get there and that's not it. And I think like maybe we have the privilege of there not really being an end goal, so we don't get there and feel that way. Or if we do, we're like,
Mm.
I don't know. It's just it's never going to be, that's not the thing.
As far as what's shifted for you since our conversation, the excitement may have waned a bit, understandably. But has anything else stayed in place, or what else has shifted?
I think I just, and even talking to you now, I feel like what's kind of coming to the surface is like just kind of like a pride in the fact that we have created this life for ourselves that is so focused on actual like life enjoyment being the main goal. Like that's really the goal. It's not grow the business, it's not make more money, it's like how is life better. And I feel like we're really working towards that and really staying true to that. And when I think about this life I have, like this is not the life I thought was going to make me happy necessarily. But when I think about the life I have now, I really feel so grateful for it and proud. It's like I couldn't have even dreamed of having a life this free and open and like filled with constant challenges and creativity and projects and changes. Like it's so dynamic, which for me is just so like soul feeding. I'm not a person who can like go to the office, get the same salad, do the thing. Like, and this is just like our life is so the opposite of that. And I'm just, I mean, I really couldn't have dreamed of it. And it's just like, wow, we really just created this thing. And in addition to being grateful and feeling like it's a miracle, it's like, I feel proud.
And you have every reason to be. And I really hope that pride, and it's a good kind of pride, helps carry you through everything in the coming years, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Right? Because for one, it puts the attention back on you, as opposed to putting all the attention back out in the external world. Right?
True.
Right? It's not because in the other way of viewing, where everything's a miracle, it's saying, well, everything's up to something else for things to go
Yeah.
well or things to go poorly. It's all in the external
And
world.
also the view of everyone else's opinion,
Yeah.
that whole other key chunk.
But taking some pride in what you've done, what you've accomplished, all the work that you have put in, gives yourself some credit and actually says, like, I have power to influence my world.
Yeah. It makes me honestly, when I think about it that way, and I think of like so many of my friends, including you, I'm like, we should all be proud because like we're all still working at it. Like we haven't thrown in the towel and you're not in some position where you're miserable. Like you're still doing the work to get this life that you want. And it's really fucking easy to want to give up on it. And we're not giving up. So it's like, we're doing it. It's great.
Yeah. What do you think you're going to do with that mindset shift? Does it change anything? Does it change your approach at all?
I mean, it's kind of it's a good tool to have when you're having a moment of doubt or self-pity or panic or whatever, you know? I also just really feel like it will help me just like relate to other people better when I know that they're struggling. Like I have a lot of friends who I know kind of feel like, ugh, it's like not working and I'm trying and it's not working. And now what am I supposed to do? And I definitely understand that feeling, but I want to try to relate to them that like, you're doing it. Nobody said that there was going to be a Grammy award at the end or something. That was never in the deal. Like you wanted to live this life and like you are living it. Maybe it's just, I don't know. It's so funny. Like we think that we're going to hit some goal and then like have done it. But
Yeah.
I remember there was like an Amy Schumer interview and she had just, I don't know, she was in her like height of Amy Schumerness. And everybody was like, how does it feel? Do you feel like so different? She was like, I feel the same. I feel just like me. Like it only hits so like the same with the inspiration moment. Like it hits and then it goes away. And so it's like if you're not happy with the actual life you're living, that stuff just doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's so true. It I think about right now, like life is so different at the moment where I can't go see my friends. I can't, I go to the grocery store once every 3 weeks for food, um, it's changed in so many ways. And yet for some reason, the last couple of weeks, I am almost more satisfied with my life than I have been in the last year. And I don't, and I'm thinking, why is that? I
I
mean,
feel the same way. It's such a conflicted feeling.
it is. And it's because because one of the biggest things I want in my life is partnership. And I
Hmm.
can't, like, the idea of, I can't even expect the possibility of meeting somebody new right
Yeah.
now. So that feels like totally off the table. And yet still, a lot of days during there's lockdown and quarantine, I feel really fulfilled and happy with my life. I'm like, what is that about?
Do you feel like it's taken the whole like partner thing off the table in a way that's a relief?
I, it's almost like, hey, don't worry about it right now. Like, it's not a possibility. So like, what do you got to focus on? Like, what do you need for yourself? How do you
Yeah.
how do you turn that love back on yourself? Like, you need to just keep loving yourself, man. What do you need to do?
Hmm.
What do you need to do? What can you give yourself right now? It's like, you need a cup of tea? Go make yourself a cup of tea. You need to go for a walk? Go for a walk. You need to read a book? Go read a book. You need to get some ice cream? Go get yourself some ice cream, man. Like,
Hmm.
whatever.
I know. I feel me and Percy have been so like feeling the same. I mean, I've had conversations with him before this even happened where I was like, I wish something could happen that would almost just like take New York off the table for a little bit for me so I could focus on some other things. But because it's always there, I always feel kind of tied to it. And I want to stay tied to it because that makes me feel good in some way and all this stuff that's tied to New York. And this is essentially taking New York off the table. And it's also like summer, which is lovely and it's a nice time to be here. But yeah, I think we both are feeling really fulfilled and like connected to the work we're doing and connected to each other. And we're spending more time like cooking and doing all the things that everyone's doing, like making bread and blah, blah, blah. And it is really nice. And I feel guilty that I'm like, I obviously want people to stop dying and stop getting sick, but like, can everything else kind of just like stay chill like this? Because
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, I've felt really at peace lately, and it's because I don't feel like I'm falling behind.
Mm,
I feel like I'm not playing catch up anymore for just a few months. And it's given me space to do this. Like, I would have never started this podcast if this hadn't happened. It's been way too much work to get started and
right.
to get sounding good, um and just for people to have time to talk and sit and really think about these things, have the conversation, for me to have time to edit. This wouldn't have happened if I even had a 20-hour a week job.
Yeah.
I'm creating my own schedule now. I'm creating my own content. I'm thinking about things because I have the time by myself to just reflect on my situation, my life, everything going on, that these topics become really important and relevant.
Hmm.
This was the kick in the ass that I needed. And it took everything stopping.
Yeah. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's really, we were doing, I was having a moment of like wishing a bunch of things were different. So I was like, we were in the car and I was like, okay, you have three wishes. What do you want to wish? And Percy was kind of quiet for a second. And then I remembered like coronavirus happening. And I was like, I guess the first wish obviously should be that like coronavirus didn't happen. He was like, oh, wasn't even on my mind. And I was like, it's not really on mine, but now I feel like it should be. And he's like, I don't really want to wish it never happened because I kind of like how everything is. And so we ended up being like, okay, I wish that we had gotten to this place without coronavirus having happened. Like, that would be great. Like just some shift in everyone without some huge threat that had just come from something that had to kill a bunch of people. But
And the thing is, it didn't have to kill a bunch of people. That's the sad part. The death wasn't necessary.
yeah,
We could have done lockdown a lot differently.
yeah. I mean, I wish that we would be like, okay, this was a crazy thing that happened. We were in lockdown. We've gotten through this threat, but like number one, there's some things that we like and we want to keep. And number two, there are still threats coming our way, like climate change and like the next pandemic. And why don't we just make these changes real and really make a move towards like this life that we got this taste of? But I just know that like the corporate world will be like, we're ramping it back up.
It takes leadership. It takes vision to really prepare a society for that sort of thing. We don't have leadership, on either side of the aisle. I haven't seen leadership emerge in a public way in a long time. That's what's missing. It's not about policy anymore. It's about a vision for the future and what life looks like. And this is one of the biggest examples of how, most people didn't see this coming, but some people did, and how to plan for the unexpected, and beyond that, how to set a vision for what can be. Right? That's what creativity is, right? That's what vision
Right.
is
We have
about.
a chance to design our future right now.
Right. And we always do. And we have to imagine, like, really, like, what are we living for? Right. Was it you I was talking to when I was talking about freedom, the concept of freedom?
I don't think so.
So, like, the big thing now in the country is people not wanting to wear masks, and people saying, like, or not wanting to be in lockdown, can't take away my freedom. And our country, freedom is an important value, right? Important quality. And it's thrown out there like that's what makes the US so special. Freedom, 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 right? That's at the core of the United States, value system, freedom. But nobody is ever really answered freedom for what? We value individual freedom, but so what if we are free? What do we do with that freedom?
Yeah.
Is it only for us as individuals? And is that really worth having if we're only free as individuals?
Also, I'm just like, you're not free. Like, to me, everybody who's going to work 40 plus hours a week and doing all these things that they need to do to like keep up and pay their bills and taxes and get the kids to soccer and blah blah blah, like all these institutions that we've built to like create this life that we just like get through every day. It's like, do you feel free? Like
But the thing, people see freedom as I get to choose what I do. I get to choose how I live my life. I don't have to wear a mask. I choose what job I get to do. I choose what bar to go to when I want to go to it. I choose what to buy, what gun to buy. I choose what presidential candidate to support. I choose what to do with my body. Right? All these things that's what we think of as freedom, individual freedoms. But so what if we have individual freedom? What's the point of individual freedom?
What's your vision? I feel like I hear you, but I can't get to the next step.
And that's okay. I mean, it's part of our culture that we haven't gotten to the next step. We've just talked about freedom without going to the next step. Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, and he was a psychotherapist, and he developed this line of psychotherapy called logotherapy, which is all about orienting psychotherapy towards discovering meaning in people's lives. Because he said most people who come to therapy, most of them are not mentally ill. Most of them are just dealing with human problems that need some help with general living. Mm-hmm. And most of those problems can be solved when people have oriented themselves towards meaning in their lives. He survived a few different concentration camps during the Holocaust. And he talked about freedom in the sense that he says, look, everything can be taken from a man. Every freedom can be taken from a man, except for the last of man's freedoms, which is the freedom to choose how to respond to any given situation. Mm-hmm. Right, but freedom's only half the story, or it's only part of the story and half the truth, he says. He says freedom's the negative aspect of this whole phenomenon of being human. The positive aspect is actually responsibleness. He says the danger of freedom is that it actually might degenerate into arbitrariness unless it's lived in terms of responsibleness, right? So freedom is not really enough. Freedom is one thing, but we have to do something with that freedom that we're given. So he said in the United States, we have the Statue of Liberty, which is a beacon to freedom on the East Coast. He proposed years ago, on the West Coast, we should have a Statue of Responsibility, which is essentially, it's this figure of one hand coming down, lifting the other up. So we have this sense of individual freedom, but we have this sense of shared responsibility, right? We have the I culture, and then we have the we culture. Mm. And humans aren't meant to live by themselves. They're not designed to be individuals. It is strong. It is important to have a strong sense of the individual self, a strong sense of self. Mm-hmm. But a strong sense of self is really meant to exist in the context of a we. And so now, you may be wanting your freedom to not wear a mask, but if you don't wear a mask and everybody gets sick and then you get sick, like why is it worth you having that choice if everybody gets sick or everybody dies? Is that really what we want? Like, we need to be thinking beyond just individual freedoms to the group.
Right.
And we don't want it to go so far where we get into the far left politics of Soviet Union style, because that's too much we. Mm-hmm. Not enough I or individualism.
I don't think it's ever going to happen, so don't need to worry about that.
Yeah. So there is a balance, but there is a sense of like we don't have a we culture. Mm-hmm. Because we don't ask freedom for what.
Yeah. I really, really think that you have a lot to give to the world, and I'm excited for the world for it. And I felt this way before when I've talked to you, when you were talking to like men in prison about being vulnerable, and just always, like I was saying, like always this kind of feeling that I get when I talk to you. I just really think that you're in touch with something, and you've really taken the time to think about stuff, and you are taking the time to think about it, and really hope you keep sharing it with people because everybody really needs it.
Thanks, Tara.
I'm really glad you're doing this podcast, and I really hope you keep doing it.
Thanks. That's the plan.
Good.
So appreciate you being here again and following up like this.
You got it. I'm glad I did.
Yeah, me too. All right, we'll move on to the day.
Okay. I love you.
Love you, girl.
See ya.
Ciao. Thanks for sticking around for this episode of This Naked Voice. If you're liking the podcast, please go leave a 5-star review. It helps us get found more easily on all the podcast sites. I'd love to hear from you. Any questions, comments, or feedback about the show, write to me at info@thisnakedvoice.com. There's obviously a lot going on in the outside world, so be good to each other. And as always, be good to yourself.